In Book 1, Achilles and Agamemnon have had their falling out, and as a result, Zeus has turned against the Greeks and now favors the Trojans. Zeus's plan is to have the Achaeans suffer enough casualties that Agamemnon will have no choice but to bring back Achilles, giving him his glory. And to achieve this goal, he devises a scheme to send the apparition of Nestor in a dream to a sleeping Agamemnon, imploring him to attack the Trojans, falsely claiming that Zeus is on their side. And this is a lying dream, of course, that would cause a huge defeat for the Greeks, and cause Agamemnon to sorely miss Achilles, and in return, Achilles itching to return to battle as he watches many of his fellow countrymen die. Book 2 starts off so. Now, the other gods and the armed warriors on the plain slept soundly, but Zeus was wakeful, for he was thinking how to do honor to Achilles, and destroy much people at the ship of the Achaeans. In the end, he deemed it would be best to send a lying dream to King Agamemnon. So he called one to him and said to it, "Lying dream, go to the ships of the Achaeans, into the tent of Agamemnon, and say to him, word to word, as I am now bid you. Tell him to get to the Achaeans instantly under arms, for he shall take Troy. There are no longer divided counselors among the gods. Hera has brought them to her own mind, and woe betide to the Trojans." The dream went when it had heard its message, and soon reached the ships of the Achaeans. It sought Agamemnon, son of Atreus, found him in his tent, wrapped in a profound slumber. It hovered over his head in the likeness of Nestor, son of Neleus, whom Agamemnon honored above all his counselors, and said. After awakening, Agamemnon then tells Nestor about his dream, and they assemble all the Greek elders and kings, where Nestor tells them about Agamemnon's message from Zeus, and they believe him because of his stature among the elders of the Achaean camp. So let's read from the Iliad, Book 2. And then he sat down, and Nestor, the prince of Pylos, with all sincerity and goodwill addressed them thus. "My friends," said he, "princes and counselors of the Argives, if any other men of the Achaeans had told us this dream, we should have declared it false, and would have had nothing to do with it. But he, who has seen it, is the most foremost among us. We must therefore set about getting the people under arms." With this he led away from the assembly, and the other sceptred kings rose with him in obedience to the word of Agamemnon. In my review of Book 1, I identified Nestor as the biblical Aaron, this figure that legitimizes the medium between God and man, and which is what we see here with Agamemnon's lying dream. Nestor is the one to explain to the various chieftains within the Greek camp in order to persuade them that Agamemnon has in fact communicated with God. And we can consider this as analogous to when Moses encounters the burning bush in Exodus 3, where God tells them to lead the Israelites out of Egypt into Canaan, the land of milk and honey. So let's read from Exodus 3. "Go assemble the elders of Israel and say to them, The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, appeared to me and said, I have watched over you, and have seen what has been done to you in Egypt, and I have promised to bring you up out of your misery in Egypt into the land of the Canaanites, a land flowing with milk and honey." And after his encounter with the angel of Yahweh in the burning bush, Moses is not confident about his ability to convince the elders of the various Israelite tribes that he received this premonition from God. And Yahweh, or the angel of the Lord in the burning bush, commands Moses to entrust this with Aaron, the task of credibly assuring the Israelites that Moses has in fact talked to Yahweh. So let's read from Exodus. "Then the Lord's anger burned against Moses, and he said, What about your brother, Aaron the Levite? I know he can speak well. He is already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you. You shall speak to him and put words in his mouth. I will help both of you speak and will teach you what to do. He will speak to the people for you, and will be as if he were your mouth, and as if you were God to him. But take this staff in your hand so you can perform the signs with it." And reading further, "The Lord said to Aaron, Go into the wilderness to meet Moses. So he met Moses at the mountain of God and kissed him. Then Moses told Aaron everything the Lord had sent him to say, and also about all the signs he had commanded him to perform. Moses and Aaron brought together all the elders of the Israelites, and Aaron told them everything the Lord had said to Moses. He also performed the signs before the people, and they believed. And when they heard that the Lord was concerned about them, and had seen their misery, they bowed down and worshipped. In addition, the angel of Yahweh gives Moses a staff from the burning bush, another legitimizing device. It's used to further prove Moses' providential connection. The staff is used in this series of tricks that Yahweh pulls to show Moses that what he is witnessing is real, and to use as further evidence when going back to tell the Israelites. So again, let's read further from Exodus. Moses answered, "What if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, 'The Lord did not appear to you'?" Then the Lord said to him, "What is that in your hand?" "A staff," he replied. The Lord said, "Throw it on the ground." Moses threw it on the ground, and it became a snake, and he ran from it. Then the Lord said to him, "Reach out your hand and take it by the tail." So Moses reached out and took hold of the snake, and it turned back into a staff in his hand. And Agamemnon, like Moses, has a staff, which is made by Hephaestus, and it entered his hands from descendants all the way down from Zeus. And we could equate this scepter made by the Greek smithy god as the staff given to Moses by the angel in the burning bush, or Yahweh. And in Book 2, Homer explains how Agamemnon came to have the staff and the power it gives him as ruler of Argos and the Greeks. And he describes the pandemonium caused by Agamemnon's gathering the troops after Nestor told the assembled elders about his lying dream from Zeus. And as he describes it as rumor spreading like wildfire in the translation I read from, which I assume this metaphor translates back to Greek, and we can interpret as a link to the fire in the burning bush. And perhaps the burning bush is a metaphor we are better off looking at through the lens of the Iliad, like as a rumor of discontent spreading through the Israeli camp. But the people press forward to hear. They swarm like bees that sally from some hollow cave, and flit in countless throng among the spring flowers, bunched in knots and clusters. Even so did the mighty multitude pour from ships and tents to the assembly, and range themselves upon the wide-watered shore, while among them ran Wildfire Rumor, messenger of Zeus, urging them ever to the fore. Thus they gathered in a pell-mell of mad confusion, and the earth groaned under the tramp of men as the people sought their place. 9 heralds went crying about among them to stay their tumult and bid them to listen to their kings, till at last they were gotten to their several places and ceased their clamor. Then King Agamemnon rose, holding his scepter. This was the work of Hephaestus, who gave it to Zeus, the son of Cronos. Zeus gave it to Hermes, slayer of Argus, guide and guardian. King Hermes gave it to Pelops, the mighty charioteer, and Pelops to Atreus, shepherd of his people. Atreus, when he died, left it to Thyestes, rich in flocks, and Thyestes, in his turn, left it to be borne by Agamemnon, that he might be lord of all Argos and of the isles. Leaning then on his scepter, he addressed the Argives. And Agamemnon describes his dream, which we can understand as the tricks that the angel does with his staff to prove to Moses he is in fact acting on behalf of Yahweh, where we already know how the staff became a snake, but there were 2 additional magic tricks, so here let's read further from Exodus. "This, said the Lord, is so that they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you." Then the Lord said, "Put your hand inside your cloak." So Moses put his hand into his cloak, and when he took it out, the skin was leprous. It had become as white as snow. "Now put it back into your cloak," he said. So Moses put his hand back into his cloak, and when he took it out, it was restored, like the rest of his flesh. Then the Lord said, "If they do not believe you or pay attention to the first sign, they may believe the second. But if they do not believe these 2 signs or listen to you, take some water from the Nile and pour it on the dry ground. The water you take from the river will become blood on the ground." And the version of the lying dream of Agamemnon in the Iliad is similar to the magic of the angel of Yahweh in Exodus, and that there's this same symbolism with a snake with blood-red coloring emerging from the stream of pure water in the ground, just like the angel demonstrated for Moses with the staff turning into a snake. and then the fresh water from the Nile turning into blood on the ground. And we can assume the snake eating the little chicks and then the mother bird before turning into a stone as some symbolic reference to the staff of Moses, or perhaps the leprosy of the skin that Yahweh causes on the hand. But there could be a better explanation for the leprosy that I will get to later on in this video. So let's first read from the Iliad about Agamemnon's dream. All who have not since perished must remember, as though it were yesterday, or the day before, how the ships of the Achaeans were detained in Aeolus, when we were on our way hither to make war on Priam and the Trojans. We were arranged round about a fountain, offering hecatombs to the gods upon their holy altars. And there was a fine plane tree, from beneath which there welled a stream of pure water. Then we saw a prodigy, for Zeus sent a fearful serpent out of the ground, with blood-red stains upon its back, and it darted from under the altar onto the plane tree. Now there was a brood of young sparrows, quite small, upon the topmost bough, peeping out from under the leaves, 8 in all, and their mother that hatched them made 9. The serpent ate the poor chirping things, while the old bird flew about lamenting her little ones. But the serpent threw its coils about her, and caught her by the wing as she was screaming. Then, when he had eaten both the sparrow and her young, the god who had sent him made him become a sign, for the son of scheming Cronos turned him into stone. And when he stood there wondering at that which had come to pass, seeing then that such a fearful portent had broken in upon our hecatombs, Calchas forthwith declared to us the oracles of heaven. Why, Achaeans, said he, are you thus speechless? Zeus has sent us this sign, long in coming, and long ere it be fulfilled, though its fame shall last forever, as the serpent ate the 8 fledglings and the sparrow that hatched from them, which makes 9, so shall we fight 9 years of Troy, but in the 10th shall take the town. This was what he said, and now it's all coming true. Stay here, therefore, all of you, till we take the city of Priam. So this omen from Zeus is interpreted by the Greek seer Calchas, who is the foremost augur within the Greek camp during the Trojan War, and he sees the symbolism as a prophecy to sack Troy, which we can understand as the Israelites fleeing Egypt into Canaan and eventually sacking Jericho. And Agamemnon actually lies to the Greek soldiers at first about his dream, telling him that Zeus wants them to sail home back to Greece instead of attacking the Trojans. And he does it for psychological reasons, to see whether the Greek troops are eager to go back home to Greece and give up the fight, or if they want to stick it out. And initially the troops want to go home. They all rush to the ships, and again it's Nestor to bring the dissident tribes of the Greeks back into the fold with his rhetoric and oratory skills to assert Agamemnon's rule. Here, let's read how Nestor rallies the Greek troops back in Book 2 of the Iliad. Nestor, knight of Gerene, then addressed them. Shame on you, he cried, to stay talking here like children when you should be fighting like men. Where are our covenants now, and where are the oaths that we have taken? Shall our counsels be flung into the fire with our drink offerings in the right hands of fellowship wherein we have put on our trust? We waste our time in words, and for all our talking here shall be no further forward. Stand therefore, son of Atreus, by your own steadfast purpose. Lead the Argives on to battle, and leave this handful of men to rot, who scheme and scheme in vain, to get back to Argos, ere they have learned whether Zeus be true or be a liar. For the mighty son of Cronos surely promised that we should succeed, when we Argives set sail to bring death and destruction upon the Trojans. He showed us favorable signs by flashing his lightning on our right hands. Which reminds me of Exodus 5 and 6, which is after Moses had returned to Egypt and told the Pharaoh to let the Israelites go. But instead of complying, he made the workload for the Hebrew slaves harder, having to gather their own straw themselves for making bricks. And because of this, the Israelites became demoralized and didn't trust Moses, comparable to the Greek soldiers not trusting Agamemnon and wanting to abandon the siege of Troy and go back home because of somewhat Achilles sitting out the battle. And I identify Pharaoh as Achilles from Exodus 5. When they left Pharaoh, they found Moses and Aaron waiting to meet them, and they said, "May the Lord look on you and judge you. You have made us obnoxious to Pharaoh and his officials, and have put a sword in their hand to kill us." From Exodus 6. Moses reported this to the Israelites, but they did not listen to him because of their discouragement and harsh labor. And eventually, by Exodus 7, Aaron is commanded by Yahweh to be the prophet of Moses and speak for him, and exclaims that he has made Moses a god compared to Pharaoh, which is the exact situation we find in this point so far of the first two books of the Iliad, where Nestor has to speak for Agamemnon as both good cop to the son of Atreus' bad cop with dealing with Achilles, or who I identify as the Pharaoh. And he has to speak to the Israelites and the elders as well. And Agamemnon has become a god, or at least exerted his complete authority over Achilles, stealing his girl and essentially making him like rage quit the Trojan War, which is kind of where we find Moses.
Flee like a whipped dog.
The men believe we came here for Menelaus' wife. Won't be needing her anymore.
My brother's blood still wets the sand, and you insult him.
It's no insult to say a dead man is dead.
If we leave now, we lose all credibility. The Trojans can beat us so easily. How long before the Hittites invade?
If we stay here for the right reasons. To protect Greece, not your pride. Your private battle with Achilles is destroying us.
Achilles is one man.
Hector is one man. Look what he did to us today.
Hector fights for his country. Achilles fights only for himself.
I don't care about the man's allegiance. I care about his ability to win battles.
He's right. The men's morale is weak.
Well, even if I could make peace with Achilles, the man won't listen to me. He's as likely to spear me as to speak to me.
I'll talk to him.
He'll want the girl back.
From Exodus 7. Then the Lord said to Moses, "See, I have made you like God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron will be your prophet. You are to say everything I command you, and your brother Aaron is to tell Pharaoh to let the Israelites go out of his country." Book 2 of the Iliad ends in a similar way to the end of Exodus 6, where there is a list of the various tribes involved in the story. Homer describes all the various Greek city-states and leaders who sailed for Troy, united with Agamemnon, in a catalogic fashion resembling Exodus 6, where the family lines of Moses and Aaron are revealed. The symbolism of both the omen from Zeus and the magic tricks performed by Yahweh's angels are interesting and have been discussed in length, in particular by Markrahman on the Apollonian Transmission, where he writes an article covering leprosy and the metaphor of cleanliness in the Hebrew Bible. And here I'll quote from Mark from the article. "All of this is consistent with a recurring affinity shown for the chthonic and nocturnal in JEM. To be clear, what appears to be described here is the evening or autumn of an Aryan people or civilization, understood as occurring by a racial intermixture, with Jewry as effectively a shepherding god of dusk." Where Mark links the dusk as the autumn of a civilization, and I argue you can identify Agamemnon and Moses as the springtime and autumn figures that show up at the beginning as outsiders previously exiled from a civilization, to the autumn time where the host has been fully subverted and mass looting begins before the exodus of wintertime. And we can relate this to the symbolic dream that Agamemnon received from Zeus, where the 9 birds being eaten symbolize the 9 years of the Trojan War, or 9 months that bring us to the end of autumn and into winter, or the evening dusk before the night. If we go by a 12-month calendar, 9 months from March or springtime will bring us to the end of autumn and the winter solstice, this moment before the long dark winter. There's also the symbolic meaning behind the sores of leprosy, where the metaphor is explained again by Mark Brahman's Apollonian Transmission. Atonement for both men and women guilty of discharges or menstruations will involve, of course, meeting Yahweh at the tent of meeting and suggestively sacrificing turtle doves and pigeons as sin offerings and burnt offering. In Genesis chapter 15, verse 9, a Gozol is offered by the man who will become known as Abraham as a sacrifice to Yahweh. Of course, this study argues the case that the dove, whether as a symbol of the Holy Spirit descending of the Jewish Christ during baptism or as a bird sacred to Ishtar and Venus, is a symbol of the Aryan. Regardless, this sacrifice appears to represent another effort of Israelites to purge themselves of discharge or their Aryan seed or offspring and achieve the purification of a reb or admixture. Which again, we can relate this to the lying dream in Book 2 of the Iliad, where we can imagine the 9 birds eaten by the snake as a sacrifice of birds to Yahweh, like Mark mentions from Genesis. And furthermore, the snake is blood red covered and it emerges from a pure stream of water, which we can picture being some kind of reference to menstruation or a form of sexual innuendo. And moreover, to that point, Mark writes this sacrifice appears to represent another effort of Israelites to purge themselves of discharge or their Aryan seed or offspring and achieve the purification of a reb or admixture. And beginning in Exodus 3, Moses talks with the angel of the Lord through the burning bush, and the Lord tells him to go into the wilderness and meet Aaron, which we can understand as a process to purge himself of his mixed offspring Gershom before ultimately returning to Egypt in the Israelite camp. Additionally, Mark explains through his article, another metaphor in Leviticus and elsewhere in the Hebrew Bible appears to be, shockingly, leprosy as a metaphor for fair skin. Hence, in accordance with today's leftist public discourse, whiteness itself is understood as a kind of disease. And in Exodus 3, the leprosy that Yahweh inflicts on Moses' hand is described as snow white, and once he removes his hand, it returns to flesh-colored skin. And furthermore, from Mark, in Leviticus, this leprosy is also described as developing first as white swellings. The word here, though, for swelling is seethe, which may mean swelling, but also authority, exaltation, high position, majesty, and uprising. In fact, of 14 occurrences in the Hebrew Bible, only in the 7 appearances in Leviticus is it used to describe a physical swelling, as opposed to a metaphorical one. Hence, white swellings on the body might ostensibly also be translated as a white authority or white uprising. And we can imagine both Semitic leaders Agamemnon and Moses having to deal with white uprisings, or maybe better put, white authority, centered around Achilles and Pharaoh, respectively. And once again, the leprosy of Moses is said to be white as snow, which Mark explains again in his article, that the condition is understood as making a person shelag, or white as snow, may even be part of a broader metaphor that understands degenerating Aryan blood, if originating in the heavens as a snow melting in the mountains of Lebanon, feeding the fertile Sea of Galilee, then descending down the Jordan into the salty Dead Sea adjacent to Judea. And through reading both Book 2 of the Iliad and Exodus 1 through 7, and applying JM theory, we can understand both sides of the same story, and it's helpful to explain the ancient themes with the more modern implications, where Moses represents kind of this liberal side of the caducean of American politics, the side that is moralized in our national narrative, where any transgressions or misconducts are made to fit the moral of the story instead of some kind of loony bin spectacle of their colleagues across the aisle. Like Moses is a Democrat who may have said or done things that in today's light would get you blacklisted, if not be for this political clout one may have already accumulated. Like Moses kills an Egyptian, and it's written as though it was some kind of righteous act, right? Because, hey, I was being oppressed. Israelites are being oppressed. And it's said that he goes off and he marries a Midian priestess, Zipporah. And it's really more like he probably abducts her, but they say Mary in the Bible, right? So like someone who is on the moralizing or liberal side of politics will weather any story that doesn't challenge those really in power. And only through Mark's work in the Apollonian transmission can we begin to interpret the burning bush and afterwards with Moses' return to Egypt? He said to kind of purify or atone for his impure mixing with Zipporah and fathering Gershom, and this could be seen as some kind of Goth or prior racist sentiment or of these like established older elite politicians that is explained away after some time, right? And now they've kind of morphed into this leader of the modern day Liberal Party. But obviously, it's just part of the illusion of democracy that is cast by this caduceum. Well, that brings us to the end of this video, and I hope you enjoyed it and found it informative. Be on the lookout for further exploration into both the Iliad and Exodus, as well as other ancient mythos of the Mediterranean and Near East. Bye.